found this article, and so we need to talk about this. Though I'm not so sure we need to talk about it. But I want to. Can pork be made kosher? Jewish scholars thinks is possible. So let me just read for you here, just the top lines of it. For the first time in thousands of years, the power of modern technology may pave the way for kosher Jews to taste pork. It's an idea that influential rabbis have been pondering in recent months as the scientists behind cell cultured meat. Now, is that not cloning? Cell cultured meat edge closer to the point at which their products will be ready for restaurants and grocery stores because of the way these scientists are cultivating animal cells to grow into high-tech meat called clean meat. In the industry, it may allow them to circumvent religious laws that have long prohibited Jews from eating pork. Now, what I want to do is, here we go. Let me just go to this. Now, I also found an article here. Let's do this. Now, this is an article, Can Pork Ever Be Kosher? And it's from Rabbi Daniel Lapin. It says, we are choosing to answer your question because you are not alone in your misconception about kosher food. The mistake you make is quite common, but is based on a completely incorrect basic premise. Not eating pig has nothing to do with it being a scavenger. The prohibition is based on Leviticus 11:7, where God specifically forbids it with no reason given. That animal is singled out and mentioned by name because it has one of the two signs that mark an animal as kosher. Pigs have split hooves, but do not chew the cud. So let's just take it from there. I want to go away from that, and you're welcome to look those up. This is at Rabbi Daniel Lapin, LAPIN.com. You can look that up. The loophole is at QZ.com. Quartz is quartz.com or QZ.com. So you can go look those up if you want to. It wouldn't make any difference whether or not to me, it sounds like the same technology as what we're talking about with cloning. And that's why I wanted to jump right into this. Maybe it's not the same technology, but it is the same kind of thing. You're just regenetically, scientists making these things work so that they can supply something that don't need to be supplied. It's like if you're really craving pork all that much, go out and stinking eat pork. If I'm not advocating, but I mean, if that's what you want to do, it's between you and God. You're just going against what God said to do. So if that's where your mindset is, then maybe you just need to get saved. Anyway, that's my point. I'm sticking to it. John, I'm going to jump to you first.
Well, my first question is, why are we wanting to? Why is the world trying to help us break the commandments? I mean, I mean, honestly, why are they so concerned whether they can make a way for us to eat pork? I mean, pork's never been food. It's just, that's what the scripture says. It's not food. And then, so it brings to the next conclusion, is lab grown stuff, is it food? I mean, we're supposed to eat food, right? We're not supposed to try to create food. Look at the Star Trek series, you just punch in the button. I want, chicken marsala, and it goes in and it gives you synthetic food. Is that food? What's the body designed to do? Of course, we can talk about all the reasons why pork is bad on a scientific level, but point of the matter is, and I think the rabbi is correct, is there's a prohibition. The prohibition is not because God's keeping something from us. He's protecting us. He says, and Yeshua said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. So it's an act of love that he told us not to eat something that we can't metabolize, something that's going to hurt us. It's going to harm us. It's love. And so my respect and love for him is to say, oh, you're so right.
Exactly.
I'm going to follow what you said. So lab grown or not, it doesn't seem like I don't need help still trying to make a decision when I go to the store saying, look at the package, lab grown meat or whatever it is, pig, synthetic pig, they'll give it, porkish, I don't care.
So they mix a little pork with a little non-pork, a little GMO pork.
Yeah.
Because it is, I guess, from what I read, it's genetically modified. So yeah. I think is really what it is. I mean, we're trying not to eat genetically modified lettuce. So why eat genetically modified pig?
Yeah.
Abigail, you're just chomping at the bit to get on this one.
Well, actually, I totally agree with what John said. Totally. I mean, it's like it's written, it's not food. That's the bottom line. It is not food. And it's just wisdom not to put anything in your body that is not going to bring about the effects of good eating, a healthy immune system and everything. I mean, actually, I've shown people, that's another thing, I spend time and I would show people some of the adverse effects of eating pork and what it looks like and all the parasites that are in it. And that number one is I say, God said, don't eat it. He said it because he loves us and he wants us to stay healthy. He gave us all these other foods to eat, all these greens and seeds and other meats and fish you can eat, so to me, it's just a rebellious nature that's trying to surface again. If God's in, it's that psychology. My mother used to always say, reverse psychology. Don't do this. And right away, the mind wants to do it. Whether you're Jewish or whether you're Hebrew or whatever you are, when the minute you say you can't have this, what happens? I really want this. I really want this. But the Father says, I give you what you need, not what you want. But there goes the beast again in us. The beast is always battling with with what's there you go. And so I just think it's a rebellious nature. I mean, I have a lot of Jewish family, and a lot of my Jewish family have not stuck with the dietary laws. I mean, we'll go out to restaurants and I'll be watching them eat and I'm like, you gotta be kidding, and so, but it's a choice, and the thing is the consequences to making wrong choices, that to me is the plague. It's scientifically, it's proven eating lobster and the shellfish and the pork and all that, it has an effect on your cholesterol. Pork and the parasites have major effects. I mean, if you saw what goes into your body when you eat that, it is like and anyone with common sense and says, I want to stick around for a while, I want to be healthy, would not eat it. God's, as Brad Scott always says, God is smarter than us. If he says, don't do it. Once I got kicked out of we were teaching at a church, and we were holding Sabbath there for many years. And we'd go through the Pasha reading. And when we came to the dietary laws, I would say to them, now listen to me. I'm going to say this many times because I don't want you running to the pastor of this church saying that I said, if you eat pork or lobster, you've lost your salvation. That's not what it says here. God says, if you eat this, it's not food. And what does common sense would say, if it's not food, why would I put it in my body if I want to stay healthy? Right. So I repeated that several times during this Shabbat. Didn't one of the little people that were there go running to the pastor and say, oh, guess what we heard? If we eat lobster or pork, we're not saved anymore.
Yeah.
So I got pulled into the office, and they brought me, and a rabbi in there too, and they said, what did you say? And I said, I know exactly who ran into you. And I said, I have witnesses that I said it at least 10 to 12 times. It has nothing to do with your salvation.
Right.
It has everything to do with your health.
Right.
I mean, if you do that, you're going to suffer the consequences.
Right.
But anyhow, so
well, that's why I say it's if you want to do it, go do it. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Yes, it's going to have an effect on your health.
Right. Yeah. Well, I said many times, I lost count when talking to people about this, and every one of us have talked to people about this, is that my best explanation, without going even into scripture, is, let's say you have the mechanical ability to create a motor. Okay, an engine, say even a car engine. Now, there are several different kinds of fuel that can make that engine run. You got gasoline, kerosene, I mean, John can probably mention several others, but there's a lot of different kinds of fuel that can, if you have a motor or an engine, it can't just sit there and run. It has to have fuel coming in, and when it runs out of fuel, it no longer runs, and it won't start until you get that fuel in there. So if a man creates an engine, he creates that engine knowing, actually building it so that a certain type of fuel is going to cause that engine to run. If it's a gasoline engine, you don't want to pour kerosene in there. I don't know. I think kerosene will run a gasoline, but not for long or whatever. If you have an unleaded engine, you don't want to pour leaded in there. It's what am I trying to think of? At the pump, you can buy a couple of different kinds. The words don't come to me anymore. John, what is it when you're buying
diesel? Yeah, you don't want to put diesel.
You don't want to put diesel in your regular gasoline engine. Yeah. You can't do that. So, I mean, get the point here. God created our bodies, and do you believe that God created your body and my body? Yes. The answer is always yes. Then don't you think God knows the fuel that is going to make our body run? And if we put the wrong fuel into this engine, will it not run bad and eventually kick off before it's even supposed to kick off? And of course, everybody agrees with you. Well, then what's the debate? If God says this is the fuel that you put in, and here, let me just show this one more time. I highlighted this so you can see, which I think is the biggest reason here is, in my estimation anyway. Can you see this? It says God specifically forbids it with no reason given. In my point of view, God doesn't have to give me a reason. If God says it, that's why I'm doing it. Period. And
but he did start off talking about what food is, and that's the key. Yeah. He said, "This is the food." Yeah. And then he describes what's not food and what is food. And that just solidifies it. I mean, God, he said, this is the food that I've given you to live on.
That's right. Yeah, I'm with you. So interesting. And it's the same, it's interesting that we can talk about the same subject in about 14 million different perspectives, and it's the simple fact that stinking rabbis are trying to make pork. I have this wonderful joke, and it goes right along with this. There's this rabbi that has always, he's later on in years, and he knows that he's going to be replaced by another younger rabbi and everything, and he's gone for years, He's lived his entire life. He's never eaten pork, and he's thinking, I would really like to try it one time before I die. And so he's got his whole synagogue in this one town, and a few miles away is another town with this great recommended restaurant. So he goes into this restaurant by himself. He's sitting in the booth just so that he can see the front door, just in case somebody he knows walks into the front door. So he's sitting there and he orders his pork, and he's sitting there and he's all nervous, of course, because he knows he shouldn't be eating pork, but he's sitting there, he's watching the front door and watching to see if the waiter's coming or whatever. And all of a sudden, of course, out of nowhere, in walks in the front door an entire family from his synagogue. One of his, whole family that he stands in front of every week. And they walk in and he's trying to hide and everything. And right away, they're walking by and they see him, Rabbi, it's so good to see you, so good to see you. And at exactly the same time, the waiter brings his big tray of this pig with an apple in its mouth. And he looks at his people from his synagogue and he says, Oi, you order an apple and look how they bring it.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, there you go. So
Yeah.
I always love that joke. Always love that joke.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.